Okay, so always people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, another weekly analysis for you. On the screen are the pairs that we'll be analyzing today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video because there is a bonus pair there for you. So before we do get into the analysis, I'll quickly go through the trades I'm in currently and then progress into the DXY and to the rest of the pairs. So if there is a particular pair you do want to skip ahead to, feel free to use the timestamps located below. But I had two new positions this week, one long position on Aussie Swiss. I'm looking for a really big move. I've actually been taking a couple buys here and there in the Aussie CHF in the past maybe 2 or 3 months. I had one position back here which was a break even, and funny enough the one after that was a break even as well. I had a buy position here, did see some nice upside, but it did pull back against me. So this is my third position, looking for pretty much the same idea for price to return back to this huge area of supply. Really aggressive move to the downside. I'm looking for price to return to that area. We've recently created all-time lows for Aussie Swiss, so I'm very much in the mindset of looking for that bottom and looking for that bigger pullback. Of course, the market is very bearish as a whole. I'm trying to take advantage of the counter trend move, which typically does happen every time the market does create a new all-time low. At least majority of the time we do have pretty big corrections, so I'm trying to see if I can time that and be able to take advantage of that move higher, and a push back to where all that momentum came from would be an attractive place for price to eventually get to. I quite like how price has been very corrective on the way down. Haven't seen much momentum. Momentum was starting to move a bit sideways, and as momentum slowly picks up for the buyers with the lovely break of that counter trend line, I've hopped into a buy. Entry on the 4-hour chart, probably could have got a better entry, but I still don't mind. Bigger stop loss. Risk reward still pretty healthy back to my target. So I'll manage this trade and see how we get going. And similar entry with Pound Aussie as well. This is the other trade I hopped into. I've been pretty bearish on Pound Aussie, looking for us to break lower, but we simply just didn't get that. We've been consolidating within the consolidation at this support level. So as you can see, support taking it across. We've respected a couple times, and then for the past kind of week we've just been dancing, moving sideways. I've been waiting for price to break to the downside, never happened. Momentum shifted very strongly for the buyers. I hopped into the trade as we broke out of that, stops below the low, and I'm simply just looking to target the high of the range, and then hopefully if we can get there, potentially some sells on the way back down, because I do think the bigger move for Pound Aussie is going to be a counter trend move. I do think this trend is running out of steam. So not looking for a push back to highs here. That could happen, of course. Can't see into the future, but I'm going to wait to see at least for us to get there, and then I'll start to see what type of price action we're getting and hopefully some shorts later on. But for now, I like the buys. A lot of rejection at the low. Strong shift momentum. Looks like price is now retesting that consolidation. I may close the trade early if price does bleed back inside this 4-hour miniature range, because at that point, momentum that I originally entered on is lost. So the idea with the trade is not quite there anymore. I don't mind re-entering when momentum picks up again. So I'll keep an eye on that, but so far I'm liking the trade. Hopefully we can see some more continuation back in 2.09992. And on to the DXY. So this one has been pretty bearish this week. We did see that deeper retracement which we were referring to last week. Again, very aggressive NFP, sideways movement. We got a bit more downside. I talked about this brief area of demand, really strong reaction from that area, and a big continuation, of course, giving us the higher low and then the higher high. So the plan has been pretty much looking for a pullback into this area for a buy. I did talk about this area here as potentially might be an area to give us a buy, but unless I saw very convincing price action, I was always favoring a push to this area. We never really got that throughout the week, and then we broke to the downside and we've been looking pretty bearish since then. So the plan is still pretty much the same as last week. Now that we're kind of in the vicinity, keeping an eye, you can see we're starting to consolidate. Things are starting to slow down, which is a sign that perhaps a higher low is getting ready to form. So I want to see that kind of continue, momentum shift, and hope we can talk about some buys. The first target kind of into this area roughly, around 98.890. And if things go very well, possibly a push back to the high at 100. As I suggested last week, I'm not too sure about my long-term bias for the DXY. There's a lot of resistance just above our heads, so I'm not too sure if price does manage to break through. So I'm not looking for a complete reversal until kind of proven otherwise, really. But for now, I still like this bullish structure. We broke through the highs here. Now I'm looking for the next higher low for the next higher high, or at least to push back into one of those levels. And that's pretty much what I'm looking for Euro USD as well. Euro really confident, bearish leg to the downside, not last week, the week before. Really nice bearish leg, and I'm simply looking for the continuation of that. Of course, NFP was very aggressive, very strong move to the upside, so we were favoring a bigger correction. We've got that. It was a bit impulsive, but for the most part, it looks like we're starting to slow down, which again, showing signs of potentially a lower high forming. We've got one over there, second over there. Perhaps we could be forming the third on the retest of this consolidation. That's of course where all that bearish momentum came from. So it's a very strong area of supply. And if you can maybe continue the consolidation, show a strong shift, that could be a nice entry. Targets, I would watch out for this low here. Strong support could act as support again. If we can manage to break through that, then perhaps we can see a swing back to the low. But what I would say with Euro USD is be careful. Although we do have some nice bearish structure forming, I would still argue the overall trend is to the upside. So I would still this view as a counter trend opportunity. And if I see bullish momentum really start to pick up, I won't be afraid to close the trade early with the anticipation that, okay, maybe Euro is still bullish or dollar is still weak. So for now, I like how we're moving. Going to keep close at 1.17 for some shorts and looking to see if we can catch a swing to the downside. First target 1.157-ish. Second target 1.14, and now we the plan next week for Euro USD. Okay guys, so before we progress with the video, I just want to quickly share with you a project we've been working on, Zenthryx.ai. It's an advanced AI powered trading platform which allows traders to access AI powered tools and a lot more to take their trading to the next level. And I quickly want to share with you the platform. We'll go through it briefly, take a look at what Zenthryx has to offer, what's coming soon, and what to get excited about. So quickly, let's take a look. This is the platform. This is the dashboard for Zenthryx.ai. You've got different areas for different sections and different services that Zenthryx has to offer. Here you have the CFD trading area, which allows you to access the AI powered trading signals across different markets, different time frames. There's a lot to go through there. And you can choose what signals you want to follow. You can also connect it to your broker, so you can directly take these trades into your brokerage account, whether demo or live. You can also chat with different AI agents. Here you've got a selection of different analysts. You've got fundamental analysts here, which you can talk to in plain language, discuss what the fundamental outlooks are for Euro USD, for example. You can talk with the technical analysis, the sentiment analysis, and find different information for different markets. You've got the market outlook here. This will give you outlooks for the day, outlook for the week. If you want to get a brief summary of what opportunities there are for the day or for the week, that's a great place to start. You've got the platform algorithm over here, which you can find and create different strategies, indicators. Here's the strategy validation, which actually allows you to backtest strategies and see how profitable it is, and also give you indications to how to tweak and improve the strategy. Here you'll be able to find a library of all the strategies and all the indicators you make. And the beauty of it is you can use plain language to develop these indicators and develop these strategies. No code is required. Also, the CFD strategy builder, you can come here, build a strategy from scratch. If you need some help, you've got the AI assistant here, which will give you prompts. It will give you information of how to start to develop a trading strategy. You can, of course, take the strategy and go and connect it with your brokerage account. And in these tabs, you can monitor it, monitor upcoming trades, monitor your performance on that account. And a really bright future of Zenthryx is how it looks into the future, into trading on-chain and on-chain prop firms as well. Here we have perps trading, which allows you to trade directly from your wallet on-chain. So no broker required, no need for withdrawal delays or deposit delays or KYC. Here you have an on-chain prop firm, which involves exactly what you've been seeing with normal prop firms trading on a centralized exchange. This time it's just decentralized, so the exact same rules apply, but again, look into the future, how trading is developing into the future. Here you can find crypto trading on the Solana blockchain. You can swap between tokens, place orders, launch tokens here, trading bots. You have an AI assistant there to help. You can monitor other wallets and so on, and a lot more coming in the near future, guys. So get excited. There's a lot coming here with Zenthryx. Check out the description. You can find the Telegram link to the community. And also for limited time only, we do have an offer, the Telegram Signal group, which you can find the link to that as well. So check it out if you're interested. Anyway, back to the video. Okay, so next up we've got USD JPY. So for this one, we are starting to become a bit more corrective. Of course, we had that very aggressive move off the back of NFP, and things have become very slow, almost like a consolidation. I do think price is starting to potentially form another higher low. As I kind of look at the bigger picture for the 4-hour chart, I would argue we do have, actually I'll scoot to the daily, I would argue we do have a slight uptrend at play. You know, price came into a very significant level of support recently. I can highlight it here. First test, second test, third test. It's been like a brick wall. And since then, we have been slowly trending to the upside with some higher highs and higher lows. And I would argue, based on how price is moving, there's a good chance of another high low forming and perhaps another push back into some highs. I'm not convinced long term about this bullish structure. As I scale to the weekly chart, I kind of look at these major lower highs price has been printing. I think there's a good chance for another one forming. There's a trend line around this area. I think we could come back to revisit that and potentially roll back over. So we can discuss that at a later date. But for now, looking at this bullish structure, momentum still looks overly pretty bullish to me. I quite like the bias. I've highlighted this area and I've highlighted this area of demand. I think these two levels look really attractive for some buys. It's just if price can get there. Looks like we may be breaking to the upside here, so there could be some early momentum next week. I'm not quite convinced. I would still like to see price come a little bit deeper. With that corrective behavior, that would be nice. Then hopefully take some buys off that low, or take some buys off this area here with the same expectation. Target one back at this level of resistance, and if things go very well, back at the highs at 151 as well. So basically the plan is to follow this very slow uptrend, trying to pick the lows off significant areas, strong area of support, strong area of demand. As long as price action can show us signs of a reversal, wicks, shift in momentum, that's the signs I'll be looking at for some buying opportunities, and then see if we can swing it back into resistance, either 149 or 150.755. So that's really the plan going into next week for dollar yen. It looks to me that yen is still pretty weak as well. I've had a look at quite a lot of the yen pairs and the yen basket as well. Looks like yen has still got some weakness to it, so that should help dollar yen push. Of course, USD is going to have a part to play, but I do favor more upside here for dollar yen. So that's the plan going into next week for USD JPY. Okay, so up next we've got USD CAD. So USD CAD, I'm still looking for the buys. I'm not quite convinced with the shorts. I did say coming to the week that it is pretty important that we do hold on to this level. It's been proven to be a very strong level of support previously, resistance a couple times as well. Past couple of weeks we've broken through that level. Essentially all we've had is a big consolidation and finally got the breakout of that. So the plan was to look for a break and retest of this area for the next bullish leg for continuation to the upside. But as we can see, price is actually breaking and trading underneath the level. But of course, this doesn't necessarily dictate the direction for dollar CAD. Just because we're breaking underneath doesn't mean we are guaranteed to sell off. Of course, that could be the case. Maybe price finds resistance here and we do sell off, but that's not really the move I'm interested in. The plan for me is very much looking to follow this bullish leg, and the way I see it, this bearish leg we've had the past few days is likely a retracement of that. So I'm still very much looking to buy, but I do want to see some more evidence of us closing and breaking back above this area for some buying opportunities, whether it's a strong candle or price breaks above and comes back for a retest. Either which way, to me, looks like a solid opportunity for a buy. Maybe some stops underneath the low here just for a bit more wiggle room, and targets back to the high still look like a decent opportunity. USD, I'm still very bullish on the currency itself. So if USD is going to be strong, DXY is going to be strong, that should help dollar CAD to the upside. But I would say it is quite important that we do get back up our resistance. If not, as I just mentioned, maybe price does have a bit of a sell-off, which I'm not so interested in. I'm not really a big fan of the setup. I quite like the breakout. The plan is still looking for the continuation of that, but of course now we do have a bit of an obstacle in our way. So if we can clear that, retest it, that could be a nice trade. Even the buy and the breakout could be a nice opportunity. I'll probably have stops underneath the low here just for a bit more room. and naturally targets back at the high. So that's still very much the plan going to next week for dollar CAD. Okay, so next up we've got euro pound. It's not my favorite pair, to be honest. It's it's been quite choppy. Yeah, and in general it doesn't really trend too well, so it's not my favorite pair, but it does have some moments. And this week we're still stuck at resistance. The plan has been looking for selling opportunities. We did have a very strong end to last week off NFP, so I was actually talking about some break and retest around this area, which we did see a lovely break above on Friday, had the pullback early this week, Monday, Tuesday, and we did see a continuation, not quite back to highs, but more or less we did kind of get towards that area. That's the move I was favoring this week, because we closed so strongly above the highs here. Looks to be that this move here wasn't much, just come back to retest highs, and now again seeing aggressive momentum. So to me, it's a big sign that euro pound is failing to continue this this bullish trend in the 4 hour. Every time we get into the zone, we're seeing really big impulsive bearish candles break into the downside. We're seeing that again there. So there's a lot of selling pressure, and the buyers don't quite, at the moment at least, have enough to break the high. So I do expect to see eventually a top form. Of course, if you zoom out, look to the left, this was a significant level of resistance, and due to the nature of euro pound kind of respecting support, respecting resistance, not trending too well in general, I think there's a good chance that we do turn over and see some downside. Now, I'm not looking for any long-term move for euro pound. I don't really have a long-term play for this one, but if we are going to form a potential top here, it could perhaps start somewhat of a bearish trend, and we could try to see if we can catch another leg to the downside. So what I'll be waiting for euro pound next week is if we can see a bit more downside to get back into the lows here. It would be nice to break through the lows as well to get a break of structure there, but at least a push to the lows. And then the plan would be, if we can get another drive to the high, that could be a nice place for a short, or even if we start to create some bearish structure and look for a retest, this could of course take maybe a week or two to form. So that's something we'll probably speak more about in the future. But this of course has proven to be a solid level of resistance, and if you're looking to short at the moment, that would be the best place to do it. Up at the highs around 0.874 to get some stops above the high. So anywhere kind of above the high there, or even above the high there, to be a bit safer. But those are the best places to be looking to try and get into some short opportunities for euro pound, and take some sell opportunities, because this could start to be a bit of a range, and that's kind of where you want to get your entry. So euro pound, I do think longer term we probably will see a bit more downside. Again, in terms of like finding swing opportunities and lower highs and lower lows, that could take a week to develop a bit of a trend. We still need to break structure. So again, I probably would speak more about that in the future. But for now, proving to be a very smart play for a sell. You can see the momentum we're getting from this area. I do like the opportunity for some shorts there for euro pound and some stops above the high. So that's very much the plan going to next week for euro pound. Okay, so next up we've got Aussie dollar. So I am pretty bearish on this one, another USD pair. Of course, we talked about the DXY. I'm still expecting strength for the dollar. So naturally, I should be looking to short Aussie dollar, and just exclusively looking at the price action. That is the case. I'm pretty bearish on this market. This is the daily chart. We've been in an ascending channel for quite some time. Lovely breakout past couple of weeks. A lot of momentum with that breakout. So I've simply just been looking for a pullback for another continuation of that leg, and a push to support around 0.635. So that's the plan for Aussie, and so far it looks like we're going according to that plan. We've been pretty corrective in the way up. Initially we did start pretty bullish off the back of NFP, but since then we had a bit more of a corrective ascent here, which is really the characteristic I want to see. I don't want to see aggressive momentum to the upside, because that's kind of what we had in the last breakout. Massive break to the downside, aggressive behavior back up, back within the range, and that was just a textbook fake out there. Now you can see there's a clear difference. We're quite corrective, so that naturally implies more likely to be a pullback and more likely to see the next bearish leg occur. And I'm starting to see a lot of wicks here as price comes back to retest all over the channel. We've got this area of supply to our left, which is where we initially got the breakout and saw that momentum. So we're coming back to a nice area of confluence. Now it's just up to the market to continue to develop and hopefully give me a strong shift of momentum for an entry signal. I'll hop to some shorts, stops, hopefully above the high somewhere. Initially targets back at the price swing low, around 0.642, but I will be targeting support around 0.635, which is where I got support here, which I'm expecting price to eventually get to. So pretty bearish here on Aussie. Lovely pullback, retesting some structure, retesting the low of the ascending channel. Now just waiting on a good entry, and hopefully you can ride that back to support. So that's the plan next week for Aussie dollar. Okay, so next up we've got New Zealand CAD. So New Zealand CAD, I'm still pretty bearish with this one. I've been looking for a breakout to the downside, but I'm just not seeing that momentum. Price is giving me signs of a breakout, but the momentum is picking back up. We're creating new support lower down. I've been very focused about this support level, which is effectively where we had our range here for most of the year. We've kind of been breaking to the downside quite frequently, so I'm a bit more focused on this area here. You can see a bit better on the 4-hour chart. Support, 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 and we have this descending trend line kind of connecting these lower highs. So the way I see it, price is kind of squeezing in this area. Eventually we are favoring a breakout. I'm still looking for price to break lower, but I'm kind of staying a bit more on my toes, a bit more flexible, and just seeing what New Zealand CAD does bring us, because again, as a trader, you don't want to be too rigid in your bias, because you might miss out on opportunity in the opposite direction, which again could be very fruitful. So I naturally do expect price to break low because of the failed attempts for us to break higher. Momentum kicked in, and since then we've seen a lot of rejection at the high. So naturally, I do think we will tail to the downside. Even looking at the tri-weekly chart, there's a lot of wicks there. So for me, there's a more likely chance of us breaking lower than pushing up. But at this point in time, I'm just going to wait to see which way we break out. I'm not so concerned about trading in between the lines here. I think naturally there could be some nice shorts off the high of the trend line. There could be some nice longs off the low of the support level. So if you're looking for some opportunities to try and catch a reaction as price comes into support, see some healthy rejection, there could be a smart buy off that. There could be a smart sell off the trend line. In terms of the bigger move, I'm waiting for something like this to happen, and hopefully some shorts off the back of that. Break and retest. I've got a bunch of targets below me, which eventually I'm looking for price to tick off. This will be the next big one, and then got the lows there as well. So I'm pretty bearish New Zealand CAD, but that support does need to go for me to actually start to look to sell it. So we're waiting on that. But in the meantime, as I said, can keep a close eye on this trend line, keep a close eye on this support level. I think if you're just looking for some trades, again, for a day, maybe a couple days, you can get some nice reactions off these areas, and you're not kind of looking for anything too crazy for New Zealand CAD. Wait for the bigger breakout before we look for any kind of meaningful opportunity there. But that is still the plan going into next week for New Zealand CAD. Okay, so next up we've got pound NZD. So we've got a lot of consolidation here, but I do expect eventually price to break lower, simply because I'm looking at the higher time frames. The trend still looks very corrective to me, and the way price is shaping up, the fact that we failed to continue so far, does show me that the trend is starting to tire, and perhaps we could be ready for a bit of a counter trend move, not necessarily a complete reversal. We could see a couple bearish swings before we do continue higher. That could be the case. But as for now, we'll probably not get too carried away with that bearish bias, because we're just flat, and we have been since April. So the bearish bias, the bullish bias doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, all we're doing is just fluctuating in this area. So if we're going to find any opportunities in here, again, the goal is always looking to buy low and sell high. So I would be focused on shorts around 2.27, also longs around 2.22. Anything in between, personally, I wouldn't really focus too much on that, because this is where a lot of fluctuation is going to happen. Trying to find stop loss placements can be quite difficult. A lot of noise can easily get wicked out. You're much safer in these areas. So as price does work its way to the upside, I will keep an eye on 2.27. If price action looks good, we see some healthy rejection, momentum shifts well, I think that's a smart place for a short. We've tested this area a bunch of times so far. Each one has resulted in a strong reaction. If of course we see a breakout, then that would change a lot. Perhaps we are going to see a continuation back to the highs here at 2.32, and then we can talk about the break and retest opportunity and following that momentum. So the buys are there if we get a breakout. The buys are there, of course, if we do push back into support. I don't quite see price doing that just this week anyway. So the focus is probably more so what we do at this level. If we reject well, like we've been doing, shorts are back on, looking for a push. at least halfway, but quite possibly to the low of the range. And if we do get a breakout and we see some strength, I'll probably wait for like a daily candle closure before really confirming that. Strong candle closure above the high would really give me confidence to follow that, and then hopefully some pullbacks on a retest, and then hopefully a big continuation back to the high. So again, I've been long-term bearish bias for a while, but we just haven't seen the breakout, so there's no point getting too carried away with that until we actually see price break the lows. For now, let's focus on this level, see what price does, and we can probably base some nice opportunities off that level going into next week. So that is the plan for pound NZD for next week. Okay, so next up we've got CAD Yen. So CAD Yen coming into the week, I was pretty bearish, looking for continuation of that bearish momentum from NFP last Friday. Really aggressive move. We had initially a very aggressive bullish move. It looked as if this bullish trend was just going to continue. It didn't. It smashed into highs and reversed on a dime, and simply just looking for the continuation of that momentum. We've had pretty much a consolidation and a strong break to the downside. So the plan is to be looking for the retest of this area for us to continue lower. We're still seeing rejection. I would still say that this looks really corrective to me, so a push down I would say still looks pretty likely here for CAD Yen. But of course, if I expand to the higher time frames, this bearish move, that bearish candle doesn't necessarily instigate this happening. Of course, it could be the case, but I wouldn't necessarily bet on that. The uptrend is still at play. We're still seeing successive higher highs and higher lows, so I would still bet on that continuing. There's resistance, there's levels up here, which I do think there's a good chance price can still come back to retest. We've still got a trend line here connecting the dots. Price still obeying that pretty well. So I'll still very much argue that this is a bullish market, but I do think we can see a bearish move on the lower time frames for perhaps some buys later on, especially if we can become quite corrective. I do think the buys will kick in. I've marked out this area of demand. I think this could be an area which we do push from. There's an area below us as well, so I would keep an eye on that. Generally anywhere between 105 and 106.5 I do think is an area where we could see some upside. If we could see some similar price action to this last corrective move here, I do feel like we could see something similar to that again, and possibly just another swing back to the high, back into resistance. It is a corrective trend. It's not the healthiest trend in the world, so I wouldn't necessarily bet on a crazy move to the upside. If I do get into buys for CAD Yen, it probably would just be target highs. I might leave positions to run and just see how far they can go, but because it's not a really healthy trend, it's not like we're trending very well, a push back to highs I think would be a great move if that was to happen. But yeah, the way I see it, I do think another sell opportunities on the cards, especially how we're moving, especially how we're rejecting this area. So I would suggest on the lower time frames, especially if we want to maximize that risk to reward, there could be some nice shorts there to start things off, followed by some buys later on for perhaps another swing back into highs 108.7 roughly. So that's still very much the plan there for CAD Yen. Eventually looking for a continuation. The uptrend is still at play, so I am still bullish on like the daily chart, but I do think we can see a bit more downside to start things off. So that's the plan going into next week for CAD Yen. Okay, so over to pound USD. So I said I was looking to short this week. I still am looking to short pound USD, but we had some strength off the back of the interest rates. Of course, USD pretty weak this week as well, so we didn't quite see price react as well as I wanted it to on this particular level. Support. Was looking to see if we can hold that as resistance. Price didn't really provide much rejection, so I stayed out of the market. There was no indication of price about to reverse. I've marked out this trend line as another possible area where a lower high could form. We've seen one, we've seen two. Can we see a third one? Potentially. I still quite like the momentum here. Really aggressive, nice bearish move, really breaking structure. I would still argue there's a good chance of a lower high forming, but this is where the price action and reading into price really comes into play, because at the moment we're quite bullish. This could still continue, and if price does break through the highs here, well, I won't be looking for shorts anymore for pound USD. At that point, we're probably favoring a return back to the highs. So this is where monitoring the price really comes into play. If we can see some more build up, maybe a bit of a consolidation, wicks to the upside, a strong close, well, something like that would insinuate, okay, the bears are kicking in and a lower high is more likely to form here. Of course, if we don't develop well, things become quite corrective, or bullish momentum picks up, then yeah, I'll stay out the way and keep an eye. And if we continue further, especially if we break the trend line. That would definitely make me lose a bit of confidence there shorting pound USD. We've already broken through a pretty big level. Now we're breaking through the trend line as well. That's another red flag there. So unless things look really, really good for the shorts, I'll probably just stay away from pound. So I really do want to see some evidence of us respecting the trend line well, putting in a lower high and seeing some healthy rejection and a strong shift of momentum to take some trades essentially. If not, then I will kind of back away, maybe focus on other USD pairs. For now, I think Aussie looks a bit better at the moment in terms of the price action. But this is where I'm at with pound USD. Going to see what we do at the resistance with the trend line around 1.345. If we do start to see a confident break of that to the upside, I will probably call it a day there with the shorts back away, especially if, of course, we break structure. Then the short opportunities are completely dead. But for now, that's the plan going into next week. Okay, so on to pound CAD. So pound CAD, very strong rejection off the low. It looks to me that price is forming a bit of a range here, and we've got some equal lows, equal highs. Prices being fluctuating in between. I'm still looking for us to break lower. I do think something like pound NZD, pound Aussie long term, this trend does look like it's hitting resistance. It's starting to run out of steam. We're seeing a lot of wicks to the upside. This is the tri-weekly chart. You see the level of wicks we've had there. So it's not a sign that the trend is still likely to continue. It could, but we're seeing some signs where we're starting to struggle and perhaps some downside is likely. So longer term, I'm looking for some shorts, but of course, of the analysis we've seen this week, it looks to me that price is respecting support pretty well, especially the momentum. I wasn't expecting such a strong push higher. It was a very aggressive one. I did say coming to the week, I'll perhaps look for some shorts around here, but based on momentum, based how aggressive we've moved, I'm actually backing away from that setup because I wanted to see a more slower push to the upside, kind of implying a pullback to then expect a continuation. This is more so price forming a low and aggressive reacting, perhaps insinuating more upside there. So the way I see it with pound CAD, I would favor more upside and be more confident to take some shorts as we approach 1.87. And based on the fact that we're kind of in a range, that is a more appropriate place for a short. If I kind of expand to the daily chart, I kind of highlighted resistance here with rejection over there, over there, over there, and of course support into this area here. So the way I see it, if we are ranging, we want to be selling as high as possible, and especially based on how we've moved there, that doesn't really give me much confidence to be shorting in and around this area. We could see some downside, but I wouldn't bank for a continuation. I'll be more confident to look for a big swing, or at least just for a reaction. It doesn't have to be a home run all the way here. If I can measure 50%, if I get the fib tool out and measure 50% of this range, even if I can get a push into around this area, around 1.85, I think that would be a smart place to lock in some gains, and that could be a smart place just to call it a day as well. Potentially catch some shorts off the high or some longs off the low. Already prices trading in that kind of 50 zone. That's a great place to lock in some gains. Don't necessarily have to be looking for the home run. So the way I see next week for pound CAD is either we push back to highs around 1.87-ish, and then we take some sells, or we get back to support, look for some more rejection, and perhaps take some buys again in a similar situation, back at the low of support 1.83, and at least target the 50% of the range. So with pound CAD, just trying to short as high as possible at the top of the range. Same with the buying opportunities. At the moment, we're trading in the middle, so I will kind of just sit back and wait for price to make its move, whether it gets back to highs or gets back to lows, and then we can make a decision and follow some opportunities off the back of that. But with pound CAD, a bit more neutral. Longer term, yes, I do see the trend kind of reversing, but for now, we're not really getting that sign, so we can put that to one side and focus on this range play here. So that's the plan going to next week for pound CAD. Okay, so up next we've got pound yen. So really nice move to the downside last week, and again I've been pretty bearish, looking for more downside, but we've been pretty bullish. Momentum picked up well. We had the pound interest rates, price reacted pretty bullish to that. Yen's been pretty weak this week as well. So despite the bearish momentum we saw, we reversed pretty aggressively. Now, a lot of my focus has been on this level here around 200, just to see what price does, because depending whether price respects this well or breaks through the level well, that will kind of dictate my buys for probably the next few weeks, really, because if we respect the high well here, I can see a I can see a scenario which we do end up back at support around 184. If we break through resistance, well, I can see a pretty likely scenario where we end up back at the highs here at 205, 206, 207. So depending what we do there will probably dictate the next trend for pound yen. And of course, I'll be looking to try and see if I can pick the lows or pick the highs of that trend, depending which direction it is. So a lot of my focus is at that level. Of course, last week we did see a strong reaction to the downside. Things look pretty bearish after that. And as I said on the weekly analysis, we're looking for a continuation of that. But again, that's where kind of reading into the moment, reading into the price action really does pay its due, because we didn't really see much of a reaction here. And then this was the candle off the news as well, which is kind of showing us price breaking through that area. And now we've been looking pretty bullish since. So pound yen, we're coming back into resistance. Now we're kind of back to square one. We'll see what price does. Do we start to consolidate, start to throw some wicks, rejection like we've seen previously? Well, if that's the case, I do think there could be some nice shorts next week. I wouldn't necessarily bank on a huge move down, but I do think we can at least see a reaction. You can always leave positions to run, just in case we do really get going. But if price does potentially break to the upside, well, then the buy opportunity kicks in, and then we can start looking for some pullbacks and retests, and hopefully a nice trend, maybe similar to what Euro Yen is doing. Really aggressive bullish trend. Perhaps pound yen will do something similar as well. So the focus really is at this level. As I said, we could probably see a big swing in either direction from this area. My focus will be just to see what price does as we come into this level. So keep an eye. Could be some nice shorts depending how we react. Could be some really nice longs if we do see a breakout. But the focus will be around this 200 big psychological level. So that's the plan next week for pound yen. Okay, so over to gold. So another market which is just ranging. And again, if we expand to the higher time frame, yes, we're in a confident uptrend as a whole, but we're definitely entered a sideways phase where price is building up, perhaps for a big continuation, or maybe for reversals yet to be seen. I talked about a couple levels in the market to keep an eye on. Of course, the high of the range around 34.40, and I also spoke briefly about this area as a nice place for potentially some shorts. But again, keeping the move kind of short term, not looking for a big swing because it isn't really a significant level. The high and the low, the two significant levels when the market is ranging, but this is an area which could potentially give us a reaction. We saw a slight reaction, but not much. Price did eventually go and break through, although it's still looking quite corrective. But now that we are cleared that level, this is the only level that would make sense to get involved in, at least for the shorts. And of course, you got the longs down there around 32.60, but we're nowhere near that level. So going into next week, kind of waiting to see if price can get back to the highs. And again, we'll see what price can do at that area. So far, we've been respecting it very well. We haven't got a daily close above that level since we've arrived. So if we do get a daily close above that level, it could actually insinuate a big breakout. And perhaps we can speak about some pullback opportunities and hopefully a big breakout, and the trend does continue. So we can look at some gold buys at the highs once that happens. But for now, the plan is to monitor price at this level. If we see confident rejection, shorts look good, we've rejected so well previously, we could very much do that again and possibly be on our way into the low of the range. Of course, I would always keep an eye on the 50%. That could be a very nice target initially. Again, doesn't necessarily mean you have to target this level outright, but it could be a smart area to look to lock in some gains, remove risk, just to kind of pay yourself along the way, because sometimes in ranges you don't always see the complete move to the opposite side of the range. Sometimes we get to the 50% and turn around as well. So it's a smart place to kind of monitor the situation. So I would keep an eye around 33.50 areas. It's 50% in general, doesn't have to be exact. And then of course, potentially the breakout as well. So that's something we can potentially get involved with if we do see a confident breakout as well. So that's really the focus now for gold, what we do at the high of this range. In terms of the middle, not really interested. Personally, I would stay away. So that is the plan I've got going into next week for gold. Okay, so next up we've got BTC. So it looks to me that we're in another descending channel, flag pattern if you will. And I'm looking for another swing back to the highs. You've been pretty consistent with this pattern. If I expand to the daily chart, you could possibly class this as another another example of that pattern. You can potentially even classify this move as another example of it. Maybe not so clean, but same idea, corrective behavior after a big impulse. We get the continuation. You can very much classify this massive consolidation as another flag pattern. So we've been pretty consistent, which shows to me that the trend is still pretty healthy, and I'm expecting more upside. We did retest this area as we came into the new week. That was over the weekend. Lovely retest. Prices trading kind of at the up end of the channel now, coming back into this consolidation, which is an area of resistance, and we could potentially see another swing to the downside. There's wicks forming as well, so there perhaps could be another swing to the downside for BTC before we do potentially see the next rally. There's also this brief area of demand below us. I wonder, could we see another test of that area before a continuation, or even we could see a breakout and maybe we're on our way. So what I'm trying to say is, for BTC, eventually I'm expecting to see another swing like we've done, and the best way to trade that, or two best way to trade that, is either wait for the breakout, buying on the breakout, or waiting for the retest of the breakout, or trying to catch the low, trying to catch, you know, this last swing before we do rally. That's the more kind of aggressive trade, but it puts you in the best place possible in terms of entry, stop loss, and just generally taking advantage of the full swing. So if the market was to have another move down, that could really present some nice buy opportunities for not even just the swing back to the upper end of the channel, but possibly catching the breakout as well. So ideally, something like this would be very nice for BTC if we were to see another move down. Could equally talk about some shorts taking advantage of another move back to the downside to then buy it up later on, or perhaps even just waiting for the breakout for the buy there, and then of course target back to the highs, so on and so forth. So if we do pick up momentum, keep an eye on some breakout opportunities. Buying on the breakout is not such a bad idea with BTC. When we do break out, we really do break out. Sometimes you don't even see pullbacks. Many of these breakouts have happened and we don't tend to look back really. So, you know, taking the breakout opportunities is not such a bad idea. FX can be a little bit hit and miss, but the characteristic of Bitcoin, we can be really aggressive and see a lot of momentum. So buys in the breakouts, not a bad idea, or trying to catch the dip as well. So it really depends how we react here. So far, based on the wicks, based on the rejection, it looks as if we could see another move down. If that does continue, then there could be some really nice shorts, especially if you see a nice close on the 4-hour chart back within the channel. I think that would be a nice entry, followed by some buys potentially. But again, we'll wait for price to get there. Let's see how we react first before we really talk about the buys. But on paper, that is a very nice area to keep an eye on. But long term, still looking for continuation, back to highs, so on and so forth for BTC. So that's the plan for next week. Okay guys, so last but not least, we've got dollar CHF. So another USD pair. I quite like the looks of this one. Again, similar price action to other USD pairs. We're starting to see some bullish structure, of course, since USD strength has stepped back in. And the plan is simply, can we find the next higher low for, again, another continuation? Slightly zooming out, it looks to me that price is trading around some areas of support. If we look at this area here to our left, support once over there, second time over there, briefly resistance, and now kind of hovering above, acting as support as well. So if we can continue to reject this area, I think there's a good chance for a higher low to form, and perhaps we do see the next swing. Now, USD is still very much a bearish market. We've been falling to the downside for quite a while. We haven't really taken out any key highs, so it's not like we're starting to shift. Yes, we're seeing some bullish structure, but this could just be somewhat of a pullback before we do continue bearish. So I'm not looking for any long-term bullish move just yet. I do think we can see another swing at least back to highs, and then we'll go from there. So looking at dollar CHF at the moment, if I highlight that support level again, support once, twice, resistance as well, the fact we're trading above it. I quite like the fact that we're kind of just consolidating a little bit. So if we can continue this going to next week, stay quite rigid, reject support well, see a strong shift in momentum, that could be a nice entry signal. Stops below the low, push back to highs, and then hopefully we can start to maybe trail some stops as we continue higher. There's some resistance just above us around 0.82. There's some other highs there as well. We have also had a very nice break of this counter trend line, and since then a bit of a bullish trend has formed. So the plan is, can we find the high low? Can we at least get a push back to highs? That's kind of where I would be confident with. Anything more than that, I will just be trading stops just to see how far we go. Maybe the risk reward might not be particularly great, but I do think it's a high probability opportunity, especially if we can see the DXY start to gain some strength as well. And I also do think CHF is likely to weaken soon. So I quite like what I'm seeing with dollar CHF, a lot of sideways price action, which at the moment is not providing us much, but is showing us that despite this bearish drop we had on NFP, all that momentum's kind of disappeared, and now we're just kind of in equilibrium. So if the buyers can kick back in, show some strength, could be a nice entry back to highs, and hopefully we can take it much further than that as well. So going forward, looking for another high low, a push at least back to 0.818 roughly, maybe 0.82, and then we'll go from there. But that's the plan next week for dollar CHF. And that, guys, does bring us to the end of the analysis. If you have found it useful, please be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel. If you're enjoying the content, show some love, does really help out. Share it with your friends, hit the bell as well so you don't miss out on any streams or uploads in the future. Do really appreciate you tuning in for another video. Of course, next week, lives will be back on Monday to Friday, so I hope to see you guys there. Let me know in the comments down below any particular pairs you're interested in this week, or any pairs you're currently trading. Feel free to share, I'm interested to find out. But guys, appreciate you tuning in. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you all in the new week.